The Prophecies of Plato for the 21st century. He was an ancient Greek philosopher, as we know. Plato was born in 428 BC in the month of Thargilion, which is May, and came from a noble generation. He had received music and gymnastics education and had very good mathematical knowledge. He was a student of Socrates, and the fact that in 399 BC his master condemned him to drink hemp, it was a very shocking blow to his free and restless soul. He realized that the politics of his homeland was creating a bridging gap for the philosophical, free, and restless thinking that he advocated, and he began to travel. In Lower Italy, he met Pythagoras. In Egypt, he was initiated into the mysteries of the pyramids and was archbishop in the Eleusinian mysteries. In Syracuse of Italy, he tried to establish his ideal state, but fell victim to the intrigues of the king's court, and as soon as he saved his life. And in Athens, he founded his own school academy, which lasted almost 1,000 years, until 529 AD, and the full prevalence of Christianity. Several of his works have survived, such as the Laws and Symposium, the State, and several others that influenced all of his later philosophers and scientists. This article now refers to the 7th chapter of the State, in which Plato likens the world we live in like a dark cave. And let's take a look at his ancient parable, which is very similar to the way modern culture works, even though 2,500 years have passed since this was written. The allegory of Plato's cave. There is a large dark cave inhabited by many people who are called captives. They are tied in place and cannot look around. Behind them are various people who carry some objects, animate and inanimate. The light coming from the entrance of the cave passes through these objects and creates shadows in front of the eyes of the people which are bound. So since they cannot look around them or behind them due to the bonds that fix them, they accept as reality only what they see in front of them, namely the shadows. This whole scene is set up in such a way that the captive people live in the dark, having a false image of reality. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. And their bonds are so strong that they hold them motionless without being able to make the slightest movement of freedom to discover the true truth. And this picture is very similar to that of our society today. Man is formed and grows with the sole aim of acquiring material goods, the shadows that is, without being given the opportunity to cultivate virtues and values in order to be able to dream of great ideals and spiritual ideals. Virtues and human values are presented in such a way and are so well covered in the colorful and luxurious wrapper that surrounds them that the man of the 21st century remains completely superficial. He deals so much with his wrapper that he does not see higher goals, nor does he see reality. He lives a life trapped in the shadows that some have imposed on him as reality, telling him that there is nothing behind this beautiful wrapper. And thus he remains a slave to the masters of the cave, and as long as he believes in the shadows, he becomes a shadow of his real self. Continuing, Plato mentions that there is a case when a person manages to break his bonds and look behind him where the light comes from. At first he will be blinded by his contact with light. And if anyone were to force this man to live under the brightness of the sun outside the cave, then he would go mad. So he needs to move slowly, and so he will get used to it, to realize that the real world is outside the cave, and that the shadows that he considers to be reality are just a reflection of the sunlight. This discovery will turn him into a happy man, a wise man, and he will not want to return to the cave. But if he decides, out of love for humanity, to return to the captives inside the cave, then it would take some time again for him to get used to the darkness and for his eyes to be able to adjust to it. And then, of course, he will try to explain the truth to the bound people. But as Plato writes, they will think he is trying to deceive them and will chase him or do away with him. One who has read the book The Seagull Jonathan sees many similarities between the man who manages to break the bonds of the cave and the seagull Jonathan, because he also manages to fly free and developing high speeds escapes from a simple life of a gull whose only concern is how to get his food. Plato explains in his book that whoever manages to break his bonds and be free is the one who cultivates the awakened consciousness. Based then on human values and virtues, he manages to become free and creative and to conquer the upper part of himself, following the true philosophical path. Of course, it is a difficult path with many obstacles due to the long ties, but it leads to happiness. He who, out of genuine love for humanity, returns to the cave to help the captives free themselves, realizes the political path. That is, a real politician is one who first managed to free himself from his shackles, to control his shortcomings, and to cultivate human values and virtues, and then to lead other people wisely. The real politician is not based on the opinion of many, but on the knowledge and ethics he has cultivated within himself. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking of Joseph the Righteous, who was enslaved in Egypt and became the second to Pharaoh, saved Egypt and his brethren, the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, going back to this, from this so ancient but also relevant parable, we can draw many conclusions. Conclusions that are not based on psychological desires and unfulfilled repulsions, but on a 1,000-year-old wisdom left by many great philosophers and scientists in many cultures at different times all over the earth. When we do not devote time to the search for truth and cultivate a global and free thought, then we remain trapped in the darkness of ignorance and misinformation. At the same time, without realizing it, we easily fall victim to the brainwashing imposed on us, those who move the threads for an orientation exclusively towards matter. Only he who manages to shake off the shackles of his weaknesses and the false impressions that have been imposed on him, only he who walks a road uphill to his own peak and succeeds and overcomes difficulties and obstacles, drawing positive conclusions, only he will realize the futility of the shadows moving in front of him. The right standards exist, the answers have been given. Let us look around and we will discover reality as it is and not as it is presented to us. This is from State of Plato, Papyrus Publications, and on the Adrasika. I've translated this for you from Greek. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support.